Hello and welcome to episode 57 of the Boot Nerds podcast. JayMike, what's going on?
I'm fantastic, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing great. Life is good right now. Can't complain.
Life is so good. Life is so good. You know, and it gets even better when there's a ton of releases coming, which there is. That's always the case here with the beginning of the new season, at least for a lot of people, at least in Europe, I guess. But there's a ton of stuff coming. It's cool. This is also actually the reason why we've moved the podcast for today, because we wanted to discuss what was coming today, which would be these. The Hypervenom is back, kinda, in the shape of the Phantom. It's not even that. Yeah, it's a Phantom Vision too. It's all these. I've said Phantom so many times today. I can't even anymore. We're gonna talk about that today. That's gonna be very, very awesome. We're gonna answer some of your questions. And before we get started, I just wanted to mention that if you want to listen to this podcast as the audio only version on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you want to listen to it, go to boutonnieres.com and find all of the links. Also, don't forget to leave us a like on the video if you think it's awesome that we do this and we just talk boots for God knows how long. And also, if you have any questions, leave them in the comment section right down below. And with that said, Josh, I think I'm just going to let you take it away with your first reaction on the Hypervenom being back, kind of.
It's a very strange way to bring it back, but I really like it. I mean, as we've talked about on this channel, I think quite a bit over the last year or so, we tend to admire the strange releases, right? This is almost on the same level as like that F50.6 Tune-It remake, in my opinion. It's kind of there. Obviously, I think the boot is far more capable because it's just a regular Vision 2 at the end of the day. But I like the details and the trouble that Nike went through to make what a boot that doesn't look anything like a Hypervenom Phantom 1 to look as much like a Hypervenom Phantom 1 as possible.
And that's kind of the funny thing, because the first time I saw this and heard that Nike were going to do like this whole future DNA pack where they're going to bring back these iconic designs on the modern boots, and that I heard that they were bringing back the Hypervenom on the Phantom Vision, I thought, why? Why not the actual Phantom Venom that took over from the Hypervenom line? But when you think about it, it kind of makes sense, not necessarily from a visual point of view, but when you look at the tech, it actually makes sense to some extent, because I was sad looking at the boot and I thought, looking back at the Hypervenom, of course, it's, I would say one of the, I don't know what you think here, but I would say it's easily one of my favorite boots in the last 15 years. One of those boots that, just did so many things right because it was so simple. And what it has this really, really thin upper, 3-layer upper called Nike Skin. I don't know how many times they've changed the name Nike Skin, or what Nike Skin means. Basically, here was like a mesh of foam, silicone, one-piece upper that was really thin, very, very soft. They had this off-center, very, very short lacing to give you a cleaner striking surface. They had this toe-off. It was basically like a toe accentuation point to give you a more agile sensation in the ground when you change direction. There's this honeycomb-like pattern to take away a little bit of that sting when you shoot. And what else is there? Oh yeah, then there's the dynamic support system inside the boot to kind of give you a little better lockdown. Obviously, it didn't work very well in the first couple of colorways in the Hypervenom, because as we all know, the lockdown sucked badly until they fixed it. But that's a cool thing, because in the Vision 2 they have quad fit mesh acting as dynamic support system, giving you lockdown. They have a clean striking surface because of the ghost laces. They have this whole toe-off thing with the studs, emphasizing agility when you push off and change direction, because this is the first point of, what should we say, touch point between your foot and the ground when you push off. So it has all these little things. It has a 3-layer, I think something very minimalistic upper. It does make a lot of sense, and then again, it doesn't. What do you think here?
You're right. I didn't even think about how visually I think the Phantom Venom would have been probably a lot more like the original Hypervenom. But then I'm also thinking, how are they going to put that Nike swoosh across the striking element on the Venom?
Exactly, yeah.
And I have to imagine that was the determining factor on that. But also, you have to consider the history of how the Hypervenom Phantom 1 came about. It was the replacement for the T90 laser line, which I was one that was extremely upset that the T90 laser was going away because
I can imagine.
Right? I loved the concept of that boot. And I feel like every one we got was like this crazy thing where it's like you had to try that laser to understand what it was going to be like. And for them to go and replace it with, I don't know, my first impression of the Phantom, the Hypervenom Phantom was that, it's just, we're getting another variant of the Mercurial because aesthetically it has somewhat of a similar silhouette to it. It had that speed boot vibe to a certain extent. But then I think once everybody got the opportunity to try it, even though it does have some big flaws, I guess we could say, it goes down in history as one of the most unique experiences from a football boot that isn't made out of leather that I think the world has ever seen, right? And then eventually Hypervenom transitioned into what would become Phantom Venom. So I guess that's technically the lineage there. But we also kind of got with Phantom Venom, it almost seemed like it was a return more of the T90 rather than the Hypervenom. Kind of combined elements of both, where Phantom Vision is like kind of CTR 360 if you follow the lineage of that, right? So it's a weird decision by Nike, but ultimately I think they did a pretty good job with what they had to work with.
I totally agree. And, when you see these on feet, they actually look pretty cool when you're far away. Because when you get up close, I can't help but feel that it looks a little bit like the Takedown Hypervenom Felon. I don't know if you remember it. Like, it had that flat synthetic look. And
yeah. I'm with you on that. I do like the fact that if they're going to remake the original colorway, I think it's very important that they have the skull and crossbones on there. And that's something I don't actually know the answer to this, but I'm curious to ask you because you're a little bit more of an insider with the brands than I am. Why did they get rid of that? Because that was only on the first colorway or maybe the first couple of colorways, and then we never got it anymore.
I think it's because the whole, I think I remember speaking to one of the designers back then. Was it Phil Woodman? Yeah, I think so. And the whole design language basically changed. So they went from this, having this very like Venom snake inspired theme to having a slightly more, you remember the whole, I don't even know what it was, but it was this very, it was a different texture, and they had this whole like almost brick-like texture on the sole plate. I don't really know how to say it in English, so it's kind of difficult to explain. But their whole design language changed. They wanted it to be a little bit more street shoe-like, and I think having the skull and bones on it didn't just fit that design language and where they wanted to take it. They should totally have kept it and kept the boot in general, because it also evolved into being one of the worst releases of all time, like we discussed in the last podcast. But for me, the whole evolution of the Hypervenom is also a fun one, because this to me is the only true Hypervenom. I don't know how you feel about it, but the Hypervenom just changed after that. And even the 3s, they were good, but I consider the 3 more of a Phantom Venom. It was more of a Phantom Venom basically than a Hypervenom.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's fair to say that Hypervenom 1, 2, and 3, even though there were 2 versions of the 2, there was not a lot of like progression from model to model. We kind of just got 3 separate concepts kind of working with the same design language, but for the most part, I think they were all fairly different boots. Maybe Hypervenom Phantom 2 version 2 and Finish 2 version 2 were the most similar to that original Hypervenom, and arguably improved a lot of the issues that the first one had, but also lacked some of the specialness of the original, right? I think that objectively the Phantom 3 was probably the best one, is a fair statement to make. I think it was comfortable. I think it was very responsive, had good lockdown, fit well. Probably had the best stud pattern, I would argue, as well. Sole plate tooling was really good on that boot. It had a lot going for it, but just in terms of like, if you asked most people who had worn all three which one they would pick, almost all of them would probably pick the original.
Exactly. That was going to be my point, because I think you're right that objectively speaking, the third might be better in terms of overall performance. But then again, I don't know anyone who would choose that over the original, and especially the 1.5, if we can call it that, where they made the upper a little thicker and structurally, it's a difficult word to say, structurally stronger, to kind of improve the movement inside the boot a little bit. I think that to me would be the best Hypervenom from like a personal standpoint, but you are definitely right in saying that. I just don't know about continuing the whole, let's paint modern boots to look like previous boots thing, because they've done it before. We've seen it with, like, I know it's not the same, because this was more like an inspiration. We saw it with some of the Vapor 9s. We've also seen this whole Nike ID thing they had on the Vapor 12, where you could take these iconic colorways and do them on Nike ID, and it's cool and all, and it's very nice, but I just don't know if I'd probably just rather have the remake. I don't know how you feel about it, but
sure, I agree with you.
At least for this boot, right?
Oh, I totally agree with you that I would rather have a complete remake, and I think now that we're seeing Nike giving us these callbacks to that original Hypervenom, I think a remake is going to happen at some point in time, probably within the next 2 years, if I was a betting man. But I also think that I don't blame Nike for continuing to do this, because it seems like every time they have, the pack and the release has been very, very successful. People seem to really like these kind of callbacks to these classic Nike models, even though they have nothing to do with the OG models other than the way that they look. But I don't know, to me, you can definitely view this remake as kind of a little bit ugly. I like the trouble that they went through to try and make it look like it has an off-centered lacing system with that little kind of square black piece on the lateral side, even though there's clearly a lace cover and it's just clearly not a Hypervenom. But you're right, from a distance, you really wouldn't know. It looks like an OG Hypervenom, which is really cool. So I think they got all the details right. I love the fact that they still went with the orange sole plate and the black trim around the edge. That's a nice little touch as well. I don't know. I am, as goofy as it looks, I'm totally not mad at it. And I think that this is going to be the first colorway of oh my God. You're right. It's going to be the first colorway of Phantom Vision 2 that I think people are genuinely interested in.
You don't like the look of the Phantom Vision 2?
I'm not crazy about it, I have to be honest. The launch colorway was not my favorite. I thought that the black, what is it called? Is it called Kinetic Black?
Yeah.
The second pack, Kinetic Black. I think those look a little bit better, mainly because it's more kind of one color all the way through.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm not in love with I don't think the Phantom Vision 1 or 2 have been the best looking football boots.
Okay, I actually think the new Visions, the visuals of the boot, they look quite good. I like this whole very angular design they have to the lace cover. It just, to me, it looks stylish. I like it, especially the white one that just came out. Very, very solid looking boot. But fair point, and it might split opinion. I'm just a little worried that people will see this and think, okay, it's not the original Hypervenom. I'm not going to bother. Is this going to be a little bit like wearing a takedown, if you know what I mean? Because it's not the original. Do you want the street cred of this instead of the original? Yeah. I don't really know. I'm as you can probably hear, I'm kind of 50-50 on it, because I think it's great to have the design back, and I think it actually looks really, really cool. But on the other hand, they just could have made so much more. They could have done more with it. And that's probably what I'm bummed about, that there was so much potential with bringing this one back. And I feel like they only managed to do it halfway. Yeah. Halfway is very, very good, because it's a beautiful football boot. But it's just there was potential to do more. But let me flip it, however, because let's take a boot where we wouldn't want the original back so bad. Which are the really good looking football boot can we mention that we would potentially not want back? Let's say the Vapor 4, the pine green Vapor 4, the Ronaldo ball during the Euros, right? Or, we can also say the Vapor 4 as well. I probably want it back, but if you put that on the, or let's take the pink Berry 4s, like would you put that on a Vapor 13 and take that instead?
I think people would love that. And yeah, absolutely, I would. Look, I don't think Hypervenom Phantom 1 is old enough to where people wouldn't wear it today if it was still available, right? I think when you get into those early Mercurials, as we talked about in the last podcast, I think we have fond memories of them. But if you went to go put them on your feet today, you'd be like, oh my God, this is not good. I don't want to actually wear this.
Except for the Vapor 3, which, as we all know, is a fantastic football boot.
I don't know. It's just one of those things. I'm not mad at it. And I think we have to realize as well that at the end of the day, these releases come out obviously for the sake of bringing a little bit of hype to the brand, but they're also very clearly trying to promote the current inline models rather than the old ones, which I think is important, right? I think even when we got Laser 1 Remake, which I don't think anybody really saw coming, that basically came out almost alongside Phantom Venom to hype the concept of somewhat of a return of a T90 concept, right? So I don't know. We'll see. I think given the fact that Addy has done some of these remakes and really taking it, they've gone the extra mile in terms of giving us something that is more similar to the OG, then maybe this is a little bit disappointing in that regard. Like maybe we could have gotten a more Hypervenom 1 upper with the Phantom Vision tooling. That would have been okay.
I would take it.
Yeah, I'd be happy with that as well. But I don't know. I'm not mad at what they've done.
No, I know what you're saying, Josh. I know what you're saying. And when you look at it from like a brand point of view, it's actually a brilliant story. They have this whole future DNA concept that they want to basically bring the look and the DNA of those historical, like milestone boots that helped shape not only Nike football, but also that some of the future stars back then, such as for the Hypervenom Neymar, that he wore back in the day. And those young guys coming up today, for instance, Kai Havertz, who I can see rocking this boot, he wouldn't have had the chance to wear the Hypervenom in 2013 or 14. So it's a cool way of kind of, teaching them about the DNA of Nike football and the stars of back then. It's a cool story, but then again, just give us the flipping boot. I just want it. But I understand it, and I'll try and be a little bit more objective here and say that I understand where they're going. It's a good idea. They just need to follow up on this one with something that is as good or better.
Cool. It's weird being the not negative one on the podcast for once.
Apparently people are blaming me for being overly subjective and very negative. I just I don't know what's going on. You've turned too Canadian, man. I want the old Josh back.
So I love when you get called out. Because you're right. I feel like you've been called out on this podcast far more than I have, which I don't understand how that's even possible. But I love the fact that that's what's happening.
Yeah, it's fair enough. I mean, after all, the podcast is for, it's basically just you and I talking freely about, just like we would if we were, just chatting on the phone regularly about new stuff. And people are just basically kind of in on it. So if they don't agree, I can live with that. But just, keep in mind, this is, of course, it's just my opinion. And if you don't agree with me, I'm 100% cool with that. It's just, we just share our thoughts basically because we have a lot of thoughts about boots. But anyways, any last remarks on the Hypervisions, I want to call them.
The Hypervisions. So we had Hypervenom Phantom. Then we went from
Phantom 2, yeah.
Phantom Vision, and then Phantom Venom. So this naming thing that Nike has, I'd really like them to clear up this whole this two Phantom thing, and then getting rid of Hypervenom, and then bringing back the Venom part of Hypervenom, and It's a very confusing thing.
But this is why this is so weird, because they have the Hypervenom Phantom and then they have the Phantom Venom. So they should bring this back on instead of just,
So missed opportunity. The box label should definitely be Hypervenom Phantom Vision.
Absolutely. The funny thing is, I actually set this Hypervenom Phantom Vision in the Unisport video that I recorded earlier today. I'm very annoyed now that I didn't come up with the Hypervision thing, because obviously I think it's cooler, but that's we should.
But you know what? My final conclusion on this product is, I think that the Phantom 1 especially had such a distinctive look to it, because I remember when that boot came out, the one thing that jumped out at everybody was that kind of backward swoosh on the heel. It was just very weird. And then the swoosh on the toe was on the wrong side compared to the Mercurial. So it just had this very distinctive look about it. And I think that people who aren't even into football boots, you're going to go out and play in this new Phantom Vision Hypervenom remake thing. And there's going to be people that are going to recognize that design and legitimately think that it's the old boot, which I think is kind of a cool thing.
100%, yeah.
I don't know. How would you rate this out of 10? That's what I would like to know. Just colorway. We're not talking about the performance, just colorway.
Colorway, I would give it an 8.5. I think they're pretty spot on, but they're being undone by the lack of the honeycomb structure in the upper, because it looks flat and a little bit like the Felon, and I'm not 100% behind that, but I like it. It's really well done, and they have taken, they've even went through the trouble of having the texture from the forefoot on the heel swoosh instead of just having like this matte finish, just like they did. They had the honeycomb-like texture on the OG heel swoosh. Those little things, very cool. So 8.5 for me. Where are you?
I'm with you on 8.5. I think that's a very fair rating. I think they went through. Look, we've all seen the leaks. We're not going to tiptoe around it. And the few images that I saw prior to release, I was very worried in that, oh no, it's just going to be like the base core elements of a Hypervenom, and then everything else, the details aren't going to line up. But I think they went through a lot of trouble to make it look like it had a off-centered lacing system, the detail of the sole plate, the texturing in the right places. They did as good a job as they could have done to make a football boot that looks nothing like the original Hypervenom look as much like a Hypervenom as possible.
And this is going to be my final note, which I think is also the most fair way to put it. The best execution here would be to give us the 1-to-1 remake or something with the new the Vision tooling on. But now that we can't have that yet, hopefully, this is the next best option. And I think with that in mind, they've done a really, really good job.
Yeah, it's like, I'm just thinking of this now. It's like a Phantom Vision in a Halloween costume.
That's perfect. I should have said that in the Unisport video. That's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And it's one of those expensive, really good Halloween costumes. Like if you were a kid and you went to school, you would definitely win the prize as the best dressed for Halloween in that. For now, at least, because it seems like, there's more coming, but let's wait and see. And we know absolutely nothing. So yeah, let's move on to the questions.
By the way, if you have any questions that you'd like us to answer in an upcoming episode of the podcast, please leave them down below and we'll potentially answer them.
We will. And those who have left the comments down below would be guys such as a poster called Jay, which I respect. Which boot has the best barefoot feel in your opinion? Now, it might be just because I've worn it just today again after a number of years, but it reminded me of how crazy the Hypervenom is, because it was just, it's like playing barefooted, just with a little bit of an enhanced, better feeling of it. But in terms of boots that are on the market today, I would probably point to either the Vapor 13s, which is a very obvious choice, or does the X 99.1 count? Nah, I'd go for the Morelli Neo 2 betas, because that's also very barefoot-like.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say Vapor 13 is a solid choice. I think Neo 2 beta is a solid choice. I kind of think that like Nemesis 19.1 deserves a shout. I think that's a pretty good barefoot feel if you're looking for something from the Addy brand. And I think that's that's probably where the list ends in terms of current releases. But if we're saying all-time craziest barefoot feel, it's the
Evo Speed SL.
No, I think it's that Under Armour boot that I can't remember the name of. The really thin one. Magnetico.
The Magnetico, yeah.
That's the only, you're right. Evo Speed SL, the first time I wore them, I'm like, wow, this is like, it almost hurts to kick the ball. It's so thin. But Magnetico is like, it's so thin and it really does almost have the texture of like skin, which is, it's a little bit freaky to a certain extent, but no padding whatsoever.
In that regard, I would say it's better than the Evo Speed SL, but it just feels like the Evo Speed is just paper, man. I genuinely feel it's the thinnest, and it probably is the thinnest upper I've ever worn on a boot. But yeah, the Magnetico, it was so thin it ripped a lot, which was bad. Yeah. So did the Evo Speed. So maybe going for that true barefoot like feel is not the way forward. I think
there's a limit, and you know what? I can't say that I would like. I think those are both boots that were fun to like just train in and kick the ball and just to experience something so different. But to wear that in a match. No. Against like somebody that could potentially step on your foot. Like, it's scary running around in those.
If I saw you walking out on the pitch on the opposing team, I would not wear either of those two boots. I would step into my tried and trusted Vizaro 2s because they would protect my feet against a nuclear explosion and Josh stepping on my feet, which is kind of, I would say that's comparable. No offense, buddy. You're a strong guy. Anyway, we move on to a question from Edwin S. You always talk about your underrated boot brands, yet you never talk about the small brands like Asics, Diadora, and such. Why? And that's a good question. Seems very, very weird when your underrated brands are quite popular in terms of sales compared to those other ones. And I'll just let you think about what you want to say here, because when I saw it, I thought about it, and it's a legitimate question because we usually talk about, your New Balances and your Mizunos, but that for me is also because I don't have enough experience with the current Asics boots to really form an opinion on them. I would love to try the X-Flies, but I haven't tried the current generation. So I don't think it would be fair for me to go out and just say, based on what I've read online, how good they are. Same applies for Diadora, except for the fact that I have tried the latest boots and they clearly aren't up to standards compared to other brands. Then there's Lotto. We talk a lot about Lotto. Are they copying at times? Yes. Are they great boots? Also, yes. So I would definitely say, there are smaller brands out there, but I think the reason, at least from my side, we don't talk about them is that they aren't noteworthy enough when we talk about underrated brands that make very, very good football boots. Where I feel that for instance, New Balance and Mizuno are just way better, to be honest.
Yeah, you're right. I think I don't like commenting on stuff that I haven't tried. And if you're listening to advice from somebody that's talking about things that they have zero experience with, it's probably not very good advice. So it just, as a rule of thumb in my entire YouTube career, and Jay, I feel like you've probably followed the same path. If I don't have any firsthand experience, I can't really give you any concrete information. And second of all, I think that availability plays a huge role in this, right? Asics or Asics, is it Asics? I've always said Asics. I don't know which one is right. They tried breaking into North America and were kind of always available in Europe to a certain extent until maybe it's been at least 4 or 5 years now, where I think just due to poor sales, nobody wanted to carry them anymore. Most of the Asics boots that I've tried have been pretty good, not all of them. But the quality tends to be pretty decent. They've had some interesting concepts, and I'd love to try their new stuff. It's just getting it is the problem, right? There's nowhere to actually buy this stuff. Diadora, I think when it comes to their modern stuff, has been a bit of a fail. I think
ever since the DDNA, I think it went downhill, to be honest. Yeah,
it hasn't been great for the most part. And that's because the Diadora is it's owned by different companies in different countries, I believe. There's separate divisions now.
True, yeah.
And then Lotto? Yeah, you're right. Lotto can make some good stuff. They're perfectly capable of it, but they've also been doing a lot of copycat stuff, which
is also why we don't talk about Joma too often. I mean, some of the Lotto boots are really fantastic value for money, but yeah. I think you're absolutely right, and it's an availability thing, and especially for Asics or Asics or whatever you should call them, they're massive in Asia, and I think one of our really faithful listeners, viewers here, Darby Yang in the comment section, who is based in Japan, I can guarantee you he can tell us a lot about the Asics boots, but what I hear is that they are similar to the Mizuno boots in terms of quality, not the same build quality as made in Japan is my impression from what I'm reading, but that they offer some of the same treats. They have very high quality leather boots. They're very light and very, very good football boots for the money. It's just a shame that none of us have really tried the latest stuff, because I reckon they would rank quite well compared to some of the more available brands in Europe and the US.
Yeah, I mean, Asics, if you're watching this, for some reason,
send us some stuff.
And you send us some stuff, and we will talk about your stuff on the Boot Nerds podcast. I think that would be a very interesting episode, because Asics is the running shoes are widely available here. Mm-hmm. I don't know about in Europe, but I would assume that's the case, right? A lot of other sports, I think volleyball, Asics is pretty prevalent in. I'm not sure about baseball or stuff like that. It's just for whatever reason, the football boots, nobody carries them.
No, and it's a little bit. We used to carry them back in the day. We had that lethal Tigreal that had like an insert in the heel that kind of pushed your foot up a little bit, just like the Pele boots. You remember those from back in the day? It kind of raised your heel a little bit and put you in a more like
it was like a 10 millimeter lift. Similar, it was supposed to put your foot in a similar stance to like a traditional running shoe.
Exactly. Interesting concept, was like a brick of a football boot. Very, very clumsy, so I never really wore it. But the leather was nice, and you could tell that it was like a well-built boot. And I can only imagine that they've improved over time. So I would love to try me some Asics stuff. The X-Fly 3, man, I would, give it to me. I'll happily give it a go. I can only imagine it's good. But Darby Yang, I think, I hope you're watching this as well. So let us know your take on it. And if any of you other guys out there have experience with Asics boots, some of the modern stuff, enlighten us, please. That's why we're here. That's what the community is for, right? So great question. And a fair question. But we can only talk about what we know, basically. So next question from, let me check. Yeah, I got that right. New glasses, but I'm apparently still blind. Juzu Barigar. Why Paul always hates on Neymar? And I guess Paul would be you, Josh. The guy is a star. He simply says he wanted a new challenge when he left Barcelona. Now he wants to leave. All players have been doing that. Why chase to hate on him? My guess is because he shits on everyone on the pitch, and people are butthurt because of that. FFS. There's going to be a lot of bleeping in that comment. But I mean, why do you hate Neymar so much, man?
I don't know that hate is the right word.
Nah, but you seem to have like a strong dislike towards his not necessarily his persona, but his antics on the pitch.
Look, the diving around thing, whatever your opinion is on that. I think most people don't like that, right? And I don't think that a proper argument is to say he's one of the best one-on-one players in the world and he embarrasses players and that's why he gets fouled. Getting fouled on purpose also increases your risk of injury. And if you're a player that historically has had trouble staying healthy, then maybe putting yourself in those situations 25 times a match is not a great idea.
But he has to go to the birthdays, man. He needs to make sure he can leave for the birthday.
For me, it's off the field. It's off the pitch. And it's not just Neymar. It's professional athletes in general. I don't like to hear what is just clearly just complaining for the sake of complaining. Mm-hmm. I'm not a big fan of that from any professional athlete in any sport. And I feel like there's a lot of that than what's necessary coming from Neymar, given how he's performed for the most part over the last 3 or 4 years, basically since coming to PSG, right? I don't know. Look, I don't want to talk about. My opinion can change on anyone. Let's just say that much, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, lately I've not been a huge fan of him.
I think you're right in saying that, the diving, some of the antics we saw in the World Cup where, he was rolling around. That wasn't nice to see. I think my view on him kind of changed after I've met him. I've met him twice now, and he's actually, it just seems to me that he's obviously, I don't know the guy very well, but he just strikes me as a kind of guy who is very much in the present, and he reacts very much to whichever way he feels in the now. And that is he's a very happy, bubbly character. I guess that's also one of the reasons why he's so, unexpected and, improvising on the pitch, I guess, because he just plays football. He loves it. He just plays football. But also one of the reasons why, when he feels pain, he really feels pain, if you know what I mean. So yeah, I also get annoyed when I see that, as for every player out there who just throws themselves to the ground. But I think I'm just a little bit more relaxed about it after meeting him. I know it sounds a little bit, might sound a little stupid, but do you know what I mean? Like it's just sometimes when you actually meet these guys and you put a face on them and a voice and a presence to them, you know that they're you realize that they're people. They're standing right there in front of you. They're nice guys. You have a good time. Okay, maybe there's a little more to it than just being sat in front of your TV and shouting atrocities at them.
Yeah, you know what it is, Jay. I think it's a different perspective that we both have, because what I was very surprised about every time I've been in Europe is how much football or soccer is the culture there. Like that is the number one sport, and a guy like Neymar rolling around is not going to change people's opinion on that. No. Where in North America, whether it's US or Canada, where soccer is not the number one sport, I think it's far from it. And I think that a large percentage of the population that is not a fan of the sport, part of the reason why they don't like it is because they view it as a bunch of guys, grown men, diving around and rolling around and pretending to be injured. And when you see these clips from Neymar and even some of the stuff that he says in the media, it's very difficult doing what I do and having to explain myself to a lot of people. And like, that's a very kind of goofy sport to be like working full time in. And it's right. When you have these clips of Neymar going around, of him rolling around on the ground, it's very difficult for me to defend their viewpoint of like, yeah, soccer's kind of, it's a sport for wimps, right? And how can you, when you see some of these Neymar clips, you really can't argue against that. You're like, man, yeah, you know what? You're right. That's awful to see. And you try to explain that that's not the entirety of the sport. But I feel like not even just with Neymar, but that seems to be the trend with a lot of this younger generation of players, where it's a lot of exaggeration and a lot of diving. I even see it now when I just go play pickup, and it's like, we're playing pickup. There's no referee. Why is everyone trying to dive around and like exaggerate calls? Like, can't we just play the game? Like, this is not a non-contact sport, So for me, I think that's where, because you got to think about the popular sports here. You got American football, basketball, hockey. These are all like, basketball maybe to a lesser extent, but hockey and football for sure are very much like tough guy sports, right? It's not uncommon for guys to lose their teeth in the middle of a hockey game and still stay in the game. That just wouldn't happen in a football match, right? So I don't know. It's more of a culture difference in terms of what is perceived as tough and weak. Okay. And I think a lot of the stuff that Neymar does just gets perceived as not just weak, but almost borderline embarrassing. Okay. and it's very difficult to argue against that. Right.
Yeah, it is probably a cultural thing. I definitely agree. It's just it's just funny, when you have these views on players, you've just seen them on TV, and then you actually meet them in real life. All the Liverpool players, right? Liverpool players I've met. I've always been a Manchester United fan, which means I've just always hated Liverpool and their players. And then you meet them, met with Mo Salah and Bobby Firmino, and just realize, Mo Salah and we had a proper laugh. He's an amazing guy.
That's where I think a lot of people have a hard time separating the fan opinion and don't get me wrong. If I'm going to meet Neymar in person, I'm going to shake his hand and give him respect. Like I'm meeting this guy man to man as a person, completely different situation versus having an opinion of what the media reports and what he does on TV. Totally different, right? Again, like you just said, it's totally normal to be a fan of one team. And guess what? You hate the rival team and all of their players, but you hate them as people? No, you just don't like that they're rivals to your team, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so
I hope
let's not talk about Neymar anymore.
I hope that answers the question. We had this question, Anthony Bond. Do you think brands such as Nike and Adidas should make a return to more traditional colorways? For example, it matches the entire Adidas lineup with a black base and neon toxic green accents. Is that a more traditional color? Anyway, simple yet effective, at least I imagine so in my head. Like the current Adidas color pack is a big winner for me, and they're simple colors because they're white, black, and red. Bad colorways, personally for me, is the current Vision, Nike Victory Pack, Euphoria, Adidas Spectral Mode. Also a big fan, of the show. Thanks, Anthony. Big up, my man. Josh, what do you say here? Should they just go back to, safe classic colorways, keep it simple, or should they be allowed to just go nuts?
No, I don't think that. I'm not sure any brand has a short of like black, white, and red for a Predator, or that's really, to me, like out of think of all the modern boots, is that the only one that really has a classic colorway? I think so. I can't like. What's a classic Mercurial colorway at this point? There isn't one. Like I think you're talking about like the ones that we've had remade a bunch of times, where it's like, do we really need more remakes of those classic Mercurial colors? I think that the colorway thing is the most difficult aspect of the modern football boot industry for all of these big brands, because they want to release them so frequently. And I think we've talked about this a few times. I can no longer predict what will and won't be successful, because it seems like a lot of the colorways I do like, the general population seems to really hate. And then the colorways I'm not such a big fan of, the general population seems to love them. So
that is because, Josh, we have terrible taste because we're getting old.
I guess.
Now,
right?
I know what you're saying. And, just looking around at all the boots here, apart from, let's maybe say the Pret, yes, that's a very iconic classic colorway. There's also the Mizuno Morelia, which is also black, white, and red typically. I can't really think of anything that has been like following through over a couple of boot generations on, for instance, the Mercurial. It just and the Mercurial has always been a little bit wild. That has been the name of the game for the Mercurial. And yes, sometimes it's a hit, sometimes it's a miss, but I don't know. I maybe think that there's too much color out there, and some of the colorways are too crazy for my taste. But that's also because I really liked it back in the day, and I might sound old here, but I liked it back in the day when you had a few of the colorways. Even white boots, they stood out. Red boots were like, oh my God, he must be amazing. Blue boots, the Japan Blue Mania. Like it was wild back then, the Mercs, Merc R9s, the Match Mercs, when the first Vapors came out, even the Cinder Yellow or the Chrome Whites. It was just like, they were so radical, and those would probably be what Anthony Bond here would describe as classic colorways, right? So, but they bring out these colorways to stand out. They want to be present on TV, on the pitch. They want their boots to be something you can easily spot and identify as a certain brand. So I get it, but I might be leaning towards agreeing with Anthony here.
Yeah, I mean, look, the name of the game is flashy boots now, right? There was a time, and I feel like people's preferences have definitely changed. Like, remember when Academy Pack first started coming out from Nike, and the boots would legitimately sell out
every time
for blackouts?
Yeah,
ridiculous. Like the hunger for that kind of a colorway at that point in time was pretty tremendous. Obviously, that's not the case anymore, because I feel like every brand has given us an opportunity to buy a blackout of all their models more frequently than they ever have. I think it's just because there's so many colorways now. There's just going to be more that you dislike, right? And I think when you talk about those classic colorways, just like you explained, I think the reason why those came out and they were so mind-blowing is because, oh my gosh, it was the first time we got a blue boot and the first time we got a chrome boot and the first time we saw neon yellow, right? Now it's like there's really no color combination that you can put out that we haven't seen before. So for me, I think it really comes down to more so design on the boot, like the aesthetics, the shape, the patterns, the way that the branding is incorporated. I think that has a bigger impact on whether or not a boot is going to be perceived as good looking or not, rather than the color combination.
I think that's a fair point. You're just looking back at the collection here, you know, I can see a lot of different colors, but I can also see, you know, there's more boots. I can find more boots where I would legitimately say that I think they look good than I can find where I say I really hate that color. Like I really hate that colorway, that design. So yeah, it's a colorful thing, but you know, overall, maybe it's not too bad. I think you make a very, very strong point there, Josh.
Yeah. I mean, again, everyone's going to have their opinion. I think even if you look at like the new Predator right now, crazy looking boot. And it's one of those things you're either going to love or hate. And I think that those are typically the colorways that go down in history as iconic because...
But that's also because it's black, white, and red, right? What if it was electricity yellow or pink?
I think the visual impact of that boot is pretty undeniable, Jay.
Oh, I definitely agree. But would people have been, you know, as blown away if the launch colorway had been, you know, pink with yellow stripes or fins?
That's a good question.
It's like I
think classic Predator guys would have been less responsive for sure, but that's not what brands are after anymore. And I think that the boot nerds need to understand that is that we are a small chunk of who they're trying to appeal to. It's really the younger generation, kids between 6 and let's say 16 years old are buying the vast majority of these boots. That's who they're trying to appeal to.
It's true. It's true. Yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll see in the future what the brands decide and what sells. That's what dictates everything at the end of the day. The whole, you know, the market situation. So I guess with that question out of the way, unless you have any further comments to the whole colorway debacle, then I think it's time that we tune out for this episode of the Boot Nerds podcast. There's going to be a lot more cool stuff coming over the next couple of weeks. Of course, make sure that you subscribe to the podcast with the boot notifications, just the notifications on, to be among the first people to hear our thoughts. Some of them are very valid. Others are just absolutely crazy. But at least you can get to hear all of our thoughts if you subscribe with the notifications on, because you get a little ding when we release a new video. You can also go and follow Josh on his 2 channels, SR4U and Car Problems. See whatever he's up to of wild things with his boots and his cars. You can also go to Unisport, see what we do, reviews, meet players, teach you football stuff. It's all cool. Go subscribe right over here. And don't forget to leave a like on the video and leave us your questions in the comment section right down below. With that said, I've been JayMike and I approve this message.
Thanks for watching.
Bye-bye. Farvel.